Hello everyone and welcome to this special video in which we'll talk about how to get into dental school as a foreign grad. Since I don't have much experience about that, I brought my special guest, Dr. Sima, who will tell us all about that and how to get into dental school as a foreign grad. Welcome Sima to the channel.
Hi, Maki. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Can we start by having you introduce yourself to our viewers, tell them about your journey, what you've done so far, and then we'll go into details of your journey?
Yes, sure. My name is Dr. Sima Habrawi. I graduated from University of Sharjah as a bachelor's of dental surgery in 2020. I then did 1 year of general practice residency at the University Dental Hospital in Sharjah. I've been applying for 2 cycles to get into dental school in the US, and I can tell you about the different routes for foreign graduates to get into the US dental schools. I recently got accepted into UCLA, which is #1 dental school in the US, and it's also ranked #6 worldwide. I'm currently pursuing something called advanced standing, which we will talk more in depth about. But basically, I'm repeating the last 2 years of dental school so I can get a doctorate of dental medicine degree, so I can practice in the US and then pursue residency later on.
Awesome, congratulations. UCLA is one of the best institutions in the US. And I'm very excited for you to have this experience and start your dental school journey in the US. So to give kind of a background to our viewers about the different routes for dental school, can you start by explaining how do people who actually live in the US, who are born here, went to school here, do dental school, and how is it different from foreign grad and the different pathways available for them?
Yeah, sure. So people who graduated high school, let's say from the US, and want to become dentists, they need to go through similar routes to medicine. They need to do 4 years of undergrad, either in biochemistry, neuroscience, or any science field, let's say, for 4 years. They need to have a bachelor's degree first, and then they apply to dental school. So there's an exam in between that they do. It's called the DAT, or Dental Admissions Test. Unfortunately, I don't have much information about that test, but I know that the process in general goes bachelor's, you do the test, the DAT or dental admissions test, and then you go directly into dental school. Dental school after that is 4 years. So it's a total between 8 to 9 years, give or take, especially if there's some time lost during the dental admissions test cycle. And after that, someone can become a general dentist in the US. Now, if you want to pursue residency, that's again, you're talking about 2 up to 6 years of post-dental school training for you to become a specialist or a board certified specialist in a specific field. However, for international graduates like myself, there are 2 main routes that you can take. However, in both routes, you need to be a graduate of a foreign dental school in the first place. So there's no cutback, or let's say a shortcut that you can directly join into a dental school if you're still a student. So you have to graduate first, and then you can either go through the route of advanced standing or a professional program for international dentists. There are around 40 different dental schools in the US that offer that program, or you can go directly into residency. Now, the problem with residency is that you will have limited license to work after you graduate. So let's say there are 50 states in the US, and after residency, you can only work in 5 up to 7 states. So this is a big drawback for going directly into residency. Another problem is that going directly into residency is highly competitive because the spots are not just limited for international applicants, also for US applicants. So from 14 to 15,000 applications a year, they're only going to accept maybe 2 or 3 seats. Some programs accept up to 6 or 7 seats, but again, it's highly competitive. Another drawback is that most schools that you go direct, like if you want to pursue residency right away, most schools would require for you to have a US dental school degree. So you need to have a DDS or a DMD. And speaking from an Arab perspective, most of our schools in the Middle East, you graduate with a bachelor's degree. So you don't go through the full route of undergraduate and then postgraduate studies. So that's basically a quick summary of the residency programs. However, although it's very competitive, although it's a very tough program to get into, however, of course, there are outside the norms situations where some people actually make it into residency. However, that we can't really just base it on luck, but I mean, it's not the normal route or the easiest route for us internationals. Another more international friendly, let's say, route is doing something called the advanced standing. So basically, you repeat the last 2 years of dental school in one of the 40 dental schools in the US that provide such a program. You go back to being a student, you do everything again as a student. Some programs have 6 months of preclinical experience that is required, which means that you need to spend time in the lab. You need to do everything back on mannequins, including seminars, lectures, and exams. But at the end of those 2 years, you will graduate just like any other dental student who's doing the regular route in the US. So you'll graduate as a general dentist, as a licensed general dentist, because you need to do the license exam before you finish those 2 years. And you start pursuing your career as a general dentist. Now, it's up to you if you want to continue and do residency, of course, but that's a separate process that you need to start from scratch again after doing those 2 years. But what I've been seeing lately, or based on my research for the last couple of years, because I've been researching about this for the past 5 years, the best route actually for internationals is doing the advanced standing first. Because one, although it's 2 years and it's much more expensive than residency, however, it allows you to do to practice dentistry in all 50 states. And it also allows you to get more familiar with the US system, because as we are going to talk about it, there are a lot of differences between the US and any other country in the world. So it gets you more familiar with how the system works, the requirements, the inside tips and tricks of how to get into the residency program you want, and all of those details. And at the same time, it kind of gives you a very strong foundation, because when you get a DDS degree, you're just like any other graduates from the US. However, the main drawbacks is you're not actually wasting, but you're going back to school for 2 years. And again, it's very expensive. Like expenses can reach up to $300,000 for those 2 years. So a lot of things that people do, including myself, apply for student loans, for private student loans. Now, if you have a green card, you can apply for federal loans. But if you are a pure international student, you can apply for something called private student loans. That route, and that is a total different discussion by itself, but I can give you a quick feedback. The main issue with private student loans is that you need an American cosigner. Now, American could be a green card holder or a permanent resident or a US citizen, but they are legally liable as much as you are when they sign off when they sign off to become a cosigner. So let's say something happens and you are unable to pay your student loan later on, they are legally liable to pay the student loan for you. So finding a cosigner is the hardest step in obtaining a student loan. Some nationalities have it harder than others because it's just way difficult to communicate with the banks and try to get a private loan. However, the main issue is finding a cosigner. Another big issue is the annual interest rate. So student loans, private student loans have an annual interest rate of up to 13%. Some banks do offer student loans at a lower range, but it's usually between 11.5 to 13%. So that is, you're talking about a lot of money that you need to put back. And it's going to affect you for the first 3 to 5 years when you start working as a dentist. However, it is a very good investment if you think of it on the long run. And it is your career we're talking about. So it's a very good investment. And plus, you have a grace period of 6 months after graduation, which means you can look for a job during those 6 months, find a job and start paying your annual interest fees, and as well as the principal or the money that you obtained from the bank in the first place. So most banks offer up to 15 to 20 years to pay off your loan. But based on my interviews with several dentists who went through the same route, you usually pay it off within 3 to 5 years, maximum 7 years. So that is the thing about loans. However, if a person is a green card holder or a US citizen, a lot of people are actually US citizens, but they went to dental school outside the US, and they have to go through the advanced standing program, just like any other international dentist, because they need to make sure that everyone has the same foundation of the basics and the knowledge and the skills, just like any other graduate who studied in the US. So for federal loans, the percentage, the annual percentage is way less. It's around 5 to 6, maybe. I don't have much information on that, but it's way less. And plus all the other benefits of being a green card holder or a permanent resident. But pretty much that's the thing about loans.
Wow, wow, that was a very comprehensive discussion of all the details of how to get into dental school. So I have many follow-up questions, and let's start since we ended with the idea of loans. One question that people ask me: can we get scholarships? Is there a way to like just go for dental school in the US for free?
Now, the thing is about scholarships are usually offered for undergraduate programs. And dentistry in the US is considered a postgraduate program because you need to have a bachelor's degree first. So unfortunately, the scholarships are very limited, and they're limited to certain minorities, and they do not cover full expenses. So you can get a scholarship for like $10,000 maximum, but then you have the rest of the money that you need to pay. And it's a lot of paperwork, a lot of, they might put you into interviews. They might ask you to write essays. There are limitless options for scholarships. However, having a full ride scholarship in dentistry is not something that happens every day, unless someone is actually sponsoring you, and then it's not called a scholarship. It's someone that's actually sponsoring you to pay off.
Yeah, which is different. I see. Okay, so the loans, if you're not a US citizen or green card holder, you can get for the private loans, which are more expensive. If you're a US citizen, you can get the federal ones, which are cheaper. But you have the option of getting a loan even if you're an international student without a US citizenship. But you need that cosigner, which is actually, if I think about it, it's very challenging. Like if someone that I don't trust, not 100%, 150%, I would not like put my name on something that might cost me $600,000 or $400,000, which is a lot of money.
Yes, it is. And they're legally liable as much as you are. However, there's something called a cosigner release, which is after you start paying off your loan, after a certain number of loan payments that you make, you can sign to release your cosigner, because they are taking this loan as much as you are. So they are hindered financially, because if they want to take a mortgage loan, if they want to take any other loan, that's a very big setback for them, because they won't be able to take big loans for a while. So one of the things I highly recommend for someone who's looking into student loans is to check off when you can do a cosigner release, and if that is an option for the bank that you're getting the loan from. There are several banks. There are several banks. Usually the university that you apply to or you get accepted to gives you like a list of private student loans or lenders that they communicate with on daily basis, or they've proven to be successful with the students that they have. So usually the university helps you with this list, but you have to do the homework, you have to do the follow-up with the bank, you have to call them. The process usually takes about a month to a month and a half if you have your cosigner ready to fill in all the paperwork and to get everything ready.
I'm sure now many of our viewers who are listening to this conversation would be discouraged by the fact that they have to pay $300,000-$400,000 for this route, and they might be tending towards the residency route. That's like what most of our viewers here are interested in medicine, and they know that in the US, once you finish medical school outside the US, you just have to pay around $10,000 probably for the whole match process, and they find that as expensive. So now listening to $300,000 is probably discouraging for so many, and they might be interested in the residency route. Do you have an idea about the match rate or the numbers of like how many people apply as international graduates and how many people match? Is it like very rare or tough but possible?
There's no such thing as impossible. That's what we need to have at the back of our minds at every discussion, especially when it comes to medicine. However, we're not as lucky as you guys because we can't go directly into residency. That's the issue. As I mentioned before, residency programs are highly competitive. because of the limited seats. So is residency in medicine. However, in dentistry, a very big prerequisite is being a graduate of an American dental school. And that is like the major setback that
limits the number of residency available for international graduates. I
exactly.
see.
Now, some programs, for example, do accept internationals directly without having a US degree. However, that is very highly competitive, because when you're talking about advanced standing, you are competing with other international dentists. You're not competing also with the US graduates.
Correct.
When you talk about residency, you're competing with everybody else. That's the main issue.
Yeah, definitely. The same applies for these competitive specialties in medicine as well, like neurosurgery or plastic surgery. You're not competing with the regular, even the regular US student. You're competing with the top US students who are applying for these competitive specialties. So yeah, I can see that point. Yeah.
Exactly. So most people go through the advanced standing route. They work for a few years, get experience, and pay off their loans, and then eventually go into residency, or they can go directly into residency. Many banks offer a deferment on your payment if you're going into residency. So they can put off paying the loans for another 2-3 years. Residency programs in the US, there are about 20 different residency programs. However, not all of them are CODA accredited, which means Commission of Dental, I'm not sure about the acronym, what it stands for, but they must be CODA accredited for the residency programs, and not all residency programs are CODA accredited, meaning at the end, you won't be a board certified specialist.
I see.
So it's like taking a specialty degree or taking a diploma or a certificate in that field. However, you're not going to be a board certified specialist. And that is an issue if you think about it, because the same thing for medicine. There's a limitation in work options, or limitations in where you can work and which insurance companies will be able to work with you, because most insurance companies prefer that you're board certified. As well as there's a lot of medical legal issues as well. So yeah, that's the problem with not all residency programs are CODA accredited. But the ones that are, you apply through something called PASS directory. And then you need to check every residency program, of course, because the requirements are much different from one school to another. But as I said, most schools require you to be a US graduate.
Okay, so let's say that we're pursuing the one after you graduate that you want to repeat 2 years of dental school. And you told us about that you need to apply and you compete with all the applicants. What are the criteria that you are competing against? Like, what are there exams you need to do before you apply? Are there like personal statements you have to submit? What are the requirements you need to do in order to go in this application and compete with the other applicants?
Yes, of course, the process is very systemic. It's a little bit hectic and long, but it's systemic. So there's an exam called the National Board Dental Examination. It used to be 2 exams, but now they combined it into 1 exam. It's called the INBDE. So this exam is basically the key for you to go either into PASS and residency programs, or to go into advanced standing. So the first step is doing that exam. The exam is not very hard. The information is just the information that you need to know as a general dentist. And the exam is available almost at least twice every month. However, you need to take it in the US. So there's a visa issue for people coming here to take the exam. I'm not sure if there are any other countries where you can take the exam, because it's a computer-based exam. After doing that exam, you need to also have a high score in Tofel. So most schools suggest that you get over 85. However, technically speaking, for your application to be considered, you need to aim for 105 out of 120 and above, for them to see that you're really proficient in English and you are up to their US standards. The third thing that you need to do is something called ECE report, which is basically you send in your transcripts, you send in your diploma, and they give you an equivalent. It's an online agency that gives you an equivalent to your studies, and they convert it into a US GPA system. The ECA report is needed for both the National Board Dental Examination, and also if you want to do residency or pass application. So the INBDE, the Tofel, and the ACE reports are basically the 3 top things that you need to do before even deciding if you want to repeat 2 years or you go into residency. Now, if you want to repeat those 2 years, there's something called CAAPID. Just like residency, they have pass. For advanced standing, they have CAAPID. CAAPID is a directory that contains around 40 different dental schools that offer this program. And there's a summary. We can provide all the important links in the description for people to access it and get more information, but usually has a very concise summary of what each program is looking for, which kind of all need INBDE, what's the minimum score for TOEFL, what's the minimum GPA that you need to have for ACE. A lot of them ask as well for supplemental applications, meaning that you need to provide certain documents, you need to provide a secondary letter of intent, letters of recommendation, especially US experience, if you're able to do externships or observerships in the US. All of those factors come into play as well. Not all of them request supplemental applications, however, most schools do. CAAPID is a free of charge service. It's like a centralized website where you upload all of your documents, and then you can choose which schools do you want to send your documents to. The fees for each school you send your application to range between $190 to almost $300 to $400, so per application. So if you want to increase your chances, you might focus on schools that have a high class number, meaning that they accept around 40 to 80 students a year. Some of them accept like 6 or 7, so I wouldn't go ahead and apply for that. Make sure that you apply to any
schools only accept 6 applicants.
Yes.
Oh, wow. and if I understood correctly, so not all US schools accept these 2 extra 2 years of training. So there are only specific schools that accept that.
Yes, that's why you need the CAAPID directory.
Okay.
Because it gives you an idea which schools have this program in the first place, the deadline for each school, the requirements for each school, and emails, contact information in case you have any other questions. The cycle for CAAPID or advanced standing opens every March, and it lasts from March till February. However, it is highly important that you apply in the first week, because many of the programs have something called that they accept students on rolling basis, which means that as soon as they fill their class size, they're done. Some of them postpone reviewing all applications until the deadline is over. But to increase your chances, you need to apply in the first week, maximum first 2 weeks of the cycle. And a lot of programs have different deadlines. So a program might close in July and another program might close in November. So it is highly advisable that you keep checking the directory, make sure you plan ahead. If you're planning, let's say for the next cycle, so next March, make sure you do your INBDE first, get a TOEFL score, a good TOEFL score, get your ECE reports done, because all of this paperwork takes time. So it could take a few weeks. Studying for the INBDE could take, some people study for it for 3 to 4 months, some people for a few weeks. It depends on how much you still retain this information from your dental school in the first place.
Again, that is very comprehensive overview of the application process. Before I go in a few questions about this, if you have any questions about this and you want to have a detailed discussion about how to get in dental school, you can go ahead and schedule a consultation, as we'll leave the link for that in the description below. So I have a few questions about the application process that you mentioned. One point that is very important in the medical application process is the elective, or what we call US clinical experience. And you mentioned if you did some observership, some externship in the US, shadowing doctors. How do you get that? Or is it that important? Can you match without it? What is the value of US clinical experience for dental schools?
Of course, having US dental experience is something that will put you above everybody else and would really highlight your application. However, I know a lot of people who got in without US experience. Specifically, it's very expensive to get externships. We're talking about flights, accommodation, and expenses for two up to 4 weeks. However, of course, getting US experience, whether it's an observership or an externship, is highly advisable. You can get such externships depending on what future residency or specialty you want to pursue. So I was interested in oral maxillofacial surgery, so I did externships at Case Western, Tufts University. I also did a general practice dentistry observership for 4 weeks in Texas. Applying for such things is very easy. You just look into the websites, or you can just Google externships, let's say pediatrics externships in the US, and you can apply directly to the school. However, many schools have certain dates where they can accommodate externs or internships. And again, if you want to do an externship, you need to have a insurance, malpractice insurance. Again, there are malpractice insurance companies online that can offer you limited coverage for a few weeks, and they're very budget friendly. So you need to consider that as well. But the entire point of the US experience is it is best if you have a US recommendation letter. Someone in the US who have seen you, how you work, how you interact with your colleagues, how you interact with your superiors. That is very important because it truly highlights your capabilities of fitting in with ease at a US dental school.
What about research? Is there any value for doing research in the US when applying to dental school?
Of course, research is another thing that would truly highlight your application. However, we know that research takes a lot of time, and sometimes you might work on a research for several years and not get the publication on time. So it's not like you can work on a research right now if you're applying next year and get it published by then. But highlighting that you have research experience is very important, especially if you have any publications done, that would be great. If you don't, that shouldn't discourage you, because you can just go ahead and show them during the interview or during the application that you are working on certain research projects which are intended for publication later on. I know people who published articles, not necessarily manuscripts or scientific literature, articles on the use of magnification in dentistry or newspaper articles. There are options in your CAAPID application where you can mention all of those things, not necessarily just research. Any extra projects that you've been working on while you were in dental school. Something that they really focus on is leadership roles. So have you taken any leadership roles when you were a dental student? Again, volunteer work. And I recently learned that what they do really focus on in volunteer work and leadership is basically, were you consistent throughout the years of doing it? So they would rather take someone who volunteered, let's say 3 hours every week for a duration of 5 years over a person who just went on a mission trip for a week, let's say. So they want to see your consistency in your extracurriculars, if you have sports, extracurricular activities, if you're an athlete of some kind, any music or let's say additional talents that you have that would really set you off as a unique individual, that they will accept you as part of their dental program.
Awesome. So now moving to my final question. Now people listening to us, they're doing dental school in their countries. They have to be graduates. Why should they think of moving to the US and doing this all over again, or not all over again, 2 years and spending all that money and practicing in the US? What are the advantages of doing dental school in the US and practicing in the US?
That's a very interesting question, because a person who's watching this right now will not need much affirmation for why they want to go into the US. They've already set off their mind that they want to come to the US, and they're just looking for the routes to do it. But for people who are still hesitant, or they're considering other countries like Germany, like what we talked about before this interview, Germany or Europe in general, or any other, UK, for example, Australia or New Zealand, one thing I can say for sure is that the US is a tier 1 country, which means most of the programs here are tier 1, meaning that after graduating here as a specialist or even as a general dentist, you most likely won't need to do a lot of equivalency to any other country that you go. because it's considered to be the highest standards in medicine and in dentistry. Again, programs here really focus on and emphasize on graduating the best doctors and dentists they have. The reason why dental schools are very competitive, it's because it's a very well-paid profession anywhere in the world, but especially in the US. So therefore, you cannot get this degree unless you're highly qualified. So that's why you need to do 4 years of undergrad, and then you go into the into dental school if you studied in the US in the first place. And if you think about it, if you do those 2 years, you would be, because most dental schools in the Middle East are either 5 years or maximum 6 years. So an additional 2 years kind of puts you at the same level as any person who did 4 years of undergrad and then 4 years of postgrad dental school. So it's kind of just a way to ensure that everyone is on the same page, and they are able to practice dentistry according to the US standards in the best way possible. One thing as well is everything is up to date. Like we can take COVID, for example. The regulations and the guidelines for treating COVID, most of them were generated by American universities, because American universities highly emphasize the importance of research and evidence-based dentistry or evidence-based medicine. So being in a country that focuses on, there's no such thing as this is the protocol just because. Everything is backed up scientifically. Being in such a country really makes you a better professional, a better doctor, and a better dentist. And again, it's a challenge, of course, leaving. I recently left my my second home, UAE, and I'm here all alone pursuing this this track. But it's certainly a challenge, but something that you can look back and recognize as, wow, did I really do this? And it's going to pay off eventually. So it's hard. It's 1,000 steps, but step number 1,001, you'll be where you want to be.
Yeah, exactly. Listening to this conversation, because I don't like to listen to what I do the video about. So I want to listen to it firsthand, like our viewers, so I can ask the follow-up questions that everyone had in mind. And now listening to this, it's indeed a challenging process and has multiple steps. And I believe that most people who don't have an idea or don't have someone who can guide them with this would definitely need kind of one-on-one guidance to reach this goal. So if any of you need like help, one-on-one guidance with planning, with step, what you don't know what to do to get into dental school, go ahead and schedule a consultation on our website and get the guidance that you need. Sima, I would like to thank you so much for your time and for your advice. There is so much deficiency. There is so many resources about how to get into medical school and how to get into residency for international graduates. So I feel there is deficiency in how to get into dental school. It's like a secret that nobody talks about. So I really appreciate your time and you willing to talk about this journey and what everyone needs to get into dental school in the US. And as you said, we'll leave all the links that you mentioned in the description for people to check out.
Yes, perfect. Thank you so much, Malki, for doing this in the first place, for guiding people. I certainly had a lot of trouble getting the correct resources. So you being a connecting link to the people is such a noble thing to do in this stage.
Thank you so much again, Sima, for your time. For our viewers, if you like this video, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell sign so you get notified whenever I post future videos about dental school, residency, or research. Thank you everyone so much for watching, and see you in future videos.